Welcome to day 169 on the trail. We have three readings for today from 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verses 1 through 25, Judges 10 verse 1 through 11:40, and 2 Maccabees chapter 5 verses 15 through 27. Today, we come to one of the most difficult stories in the book of Judges, and perhaps even the entire Hebrew Bible. In Judges chapter 10, the people have once again turned away from God and are now being oppressed by the Ammonites, who lived in the region of the Transjordan. After emerging in the 12th century, Ammon began to expand into the territory of Moab in the south and Sihon in the north. When Israel cries out for deliverance, God tells them this in Judges 10, beginning in verse 13. "Yet you have abandoned me and worshipped other gods. Therefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry to the gods whom you have chosen, and let them deliver you in the time of your distress." In response, the Israelites removed their foreign gods and returned to the God who rescued them from Egypt. God, in a very parental moment, looks at Israel and cannot stand to watch them suffer. So once again, in his great mercy, he will use an unlikely leader to bring deliverance. Now, the introduction given for Jephthah is less than flattering. Judges 11, verse 1. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, the son of a prostitute, was a mighty warrior. Gilead was the father of Jephthah. Given the first and last descriptions, we might wonder why it was necessary to include that Jephthah's mother was a prostitute. After all, we cannot choose our parents. However, his father's sin does bring repercussions on Jephthah in regard to his brothers and his community in Gilead. Judges 11, verse 3. Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah away, saying to him, "You shall not inherit anything in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." Jephthah is an outcast among his brothers. And the real sons of Gilead want to ensure that Jephthah, whom they consider to be illegitimate, receive no part of their father's inheritance. The situation was so dire for Jephthah that he fled from his father's household in Gilead to live as an outlaw in the land of Tob. Now, before we get a mental picture of an outlaw in the American Southwest, the Hebrew word here is better translated worthless fellows. And of these, Jephthah is their leader. After some time, the Ammonite oppression turns to war. Beginning in verse 4. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel. And when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to Jephthah, "Come and be our commander, so that we might fight with the Ammonites." So how will Jephthah respond? Will he tell them to go pound sand? After all, they were the ones who rejected him and forced him to flee from his home. But there's another question here. Why do the elders of Gilead turn to Jephthah? Are they trying to negotiate a deal with the best warrior in the region? Or, on a deeper level, are they losing patience? Are they tired of waiting for God's deliverance and decide to take matters into their own hands? Notice that God is only included in these negotiations after the deal has been made. Verse 11. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. After successfully striking a deal with the elders of Gilead, Jephthah attempts to negotiate first with the Ammonites. In short, the Ammonites want Israel to return lands that were conquered by Israel over 300 years prior, following the Exodus. And why were the Ammonites bringing this up now? Not surprisingly, Jephthah's attempts at diplomacy fail. And when the deal falls through, the chariots and armies prepare for war. And here we find the heart of our story. Judges 11, beginning in verse 30. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, "If you will give me the Ammonites into my hand, then whoever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return victorious from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering." So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hand. You may recall in our reading from Numbers and Deuteronomy that vows were to be taken very seriously. And this vow by Jephthah is both foolish and dangerous. We have to wonder if Jephthah's intention is to try to strike a bargain with God, as he did with the elders of Gilead, and attempted to do with the Ammonites. Yes, on one hand, Jephthah's vow looks meaningful. After all, Jephthah offers God whatever or whoever comes out of his house to meet him. Again, who or what did Jephthah expect to come through the doors of his house to greet him? What if an unclean animal came out of the door first? These animals are unfit for sacrifice, according to Jewish law. Or what if a servant came to the door first? God repeatedly condemns human sacrifice. Additionally, the vow itself is altogether unnecessary. As Jephthah recounts in his negotiations with the Ammonites, God has continually rescued his people. Also, we are told in verse 29 that the Spirit of the Lord was upon Jephthah. Yet, in this moment, Jephthah tries to take matters into his own hands. God does indeed deliver Ammon into the hand of Jephthah. Then when Jephthah returns home, this happens. Beginning in verse 34. Then Jephthah came to his home at Mizpah, and there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and with dancing. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become a cause of great trouble to me. For I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot take back my vow." Jephthah's only child welcomes her father home with singing and dancing. And what is Jephthah's concern? "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble to me." Notice how many times Jephthah refers to himself in this passage. Instead of taking responsibility for his actions, Jephthah plays the victim. He bemoans, "Alas, my daughter." This attitude makes us question if Jephthah was ever truly committed to serving God or freeing Israel. Was this only about him and his status among the people? Now compare Jephthah's response to that of his daughter. Verse 36. She said to him, "My father, if you have opened your mouth to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, now that the Lord has given you vengeance against your enemies, the Ammonites." Jephthah's daughter knows who she is. She is a servant of God who is willing to sacrifice her own life for the sake of her father. This unnamed woman, the daughter of an outlaw, trusted God when everyone else did not. She remembered who God is and what God has done when everyone else was stuck looking at their own circumstances. The story of Jephthah's daughter is not only tragic, it also reflects a lack of understanding by Jephthah and an ignorance of his own traditions. If Jephthah had known his own traditions or the scriptures, he would have known that according to Leviticus 27, if a person makes a vow concerning a human, a monetary equivalent could be offered for the person's life. In fact, in the Targum of Jonathan to the prophet, we find a direct reference to this fact. "And it became a decree in Israel that no man should offer up his son or daughter as a burnt offering, as Jephthah the Gileadite, without consulting Phinehas the priest. For if he had consulted Phinehas the priest, he would have redeemed her for money." Had Jephthah known his own faith and traditions, he would have known that his daughter did not have to die. If Jephthah had just known his own history and his own tradition, if he knew the stories of his people and the commandments of God, none of this would have happened. If. And this if is a warning to us as well. Do we possess the deep and faithful trust of Jephthah's daughter, or the impatience and even the ignorance of Jephthah? One final comment on the story of Jephthah's daughter. In Hebrews 11, we find a listing of the faithful from Israelites' history, including names like Abraham and Moses, and in verse 32, and what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets. So why is Jephthah listed here? The author of Hebrews includes only his name. The Jewish Agadah, a commentary found in the Talmud and Midrash, explains that Jephthah was revered as an instrument of God to save the people from the Ammonites. Other commentators suggest that by mentioning the name of Jephthah, we are to remember the obedience of his nameless daughter. Perhaps we are to remember that when her father tries to manipulate and make deals with the creator of the universe, his unnamed daughter offers obedience. Or when her father shows ignorance for the basic beliefs of his people, his unnamed daughter displays wisdom and honor. In the end, I am not sure what the author of Hebrews intended when he mentions Jephthah, but for me, I hear the cry of the innocent at the hands of those who do not take the time to know their traditions or the scriptures. May we learn this lesson for ourselves. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.